Welcome back to this audience edition of Hannity. Radical Muslims on the march. Now, as the situation in Iraq continues to spiral out of control and as ISIS continues to take over more and more cities each and every day, Democrats are doing their level best to try and cover for President Obama. Now, here's why. Americans were warned what would happen if the Obama administration pulled troops out of Iraq too early. Take a look.
Begin withdrawing before our commanders tell us we are ready would be dangerous for Iraq, for the region, and for the United States. It would mean surrendering the future of Iraq to al-Qaeda. It'd mean that we'd be risking mass killings on a horrific scale.
You could see in the Shia South the Iranians reaching over and grabbing to take power. You could see in the Sunni Northwest the al-Qaeda folks taking power and taking leadership in that area and establishing a base for terror that could be awful for us for many, many years indeed.
Now, their predictions have sadly become our reality, but we shouldn't be surprised that Democrats don't listen, because when it comes to war, instead of doing what is in our best national security interests, well, liberals have often turned to politics. For example, watch this.
There is no reason, Bob, that young American soldiers need to be going into the homes of Iraqis in the dead of night, terrorizing kids and children, women.
As long as we follow the president's path in Iraq, the war is lost.
This war must end. The American people have lost faith in the president's conduct of the war.
The American people have spoken. The Congress has voted as of today to end this war.
There's no military solution to this. We've got to have a political solution, begin a phased withdrawal, and make certain that we've got benchmarks in place so that the Iraqi people can make a determination about how they want to move forward.
Now, the left proves time and time again that they are the party that's going to do and say anything about the country, about our brave troops, regardless of the negative impact that rhetoric has both here and abroad. Joining us now, we bring back our studio audience. KT, you've been watching this. You've been watching ISIS on the move in Iraq, and you see city after city that brave men like those two guys in the back fought for, and 4,000 Americans gave their lives for, fall one right after the other.
We gave Afghanistan and Iraq democracy on a silver platter. We won it for them. We did it with the hopes that they would become inclusive, religiously tolerant, they would become democracies, and our friends in the Middle East. They didn't want it. It hasn't worked. They either couldn't do it or they won't do it. I don't see that we should...
Why do you blame them? I blame us, because as President Bush said, if we would have stayed there, if we would have given them the intelligence, if we would have trained them, we wouldn't be where we are today.
You know, you're absolutely right. But what the debate is in Washington now is everybody's blaming everybody else. The Republicans are saying Obama pulled out too soon. The Democrats are saying the original sin was George Bush. There's plenty of blame to go around. I think we are where we are, and the question is, what do you do going forward?
You don't want to do it. You don't want to stay there. You don't want...
I think protect the homeland, become energy independent. The Middle East is funded by... Clear our border, make sure, and stop the political correctness in enforcing and looking for who the terrorists are. We're looking at 350 million Americans. We're all treating them the same.
Amber.
Let's look for the people who are the terrorists.
We did pull out of Iraq too soon in 2011. It was a completely political decision. President Obama wanted to be the president that ended the Iraq war no matter what the terms. We left Iraq and the Iraqi government unstable and unable to protect themselves from these groups like ISIS coming in and seeing this opportunity and seizing it.
So Obama blew it. In other words, if he would have listened to Bush, and by the way, it wasn't boots on the ground, it wasn't fighting, it was intelligence, and it was training.
He cared more about his own self-image than the future of Iraq and the American soldiers that sacrificed so much in that country.
Bartel?
KT
is Syria, by the way, right?
I spent a great deal of time in Syria, Iraq, and most of many of their neighbors. KT's a very dear friend, but I disagree with her. But I beg to differ with her point that Iraq and Afghanistan
a gentle lady from New York. All right,
have rejected democracy. Afghanistan isn't so much on our plate right now in this discussion, but their elections were pretty successful, and it's quite possible that if it's allowed to proceed fairly, that Abdullah, probably the good guy from our point of view, wins. Iraq, much more pressing right now. April 30th, only a month and a half ago, Iraq had its fourth national parliamentary election. It was once again a turnout of over 60%.
Look at all the cities that fell.
Sure, it might sound fine, Sean. It might sound crazy to talk about democracy in Iraq today, but we have to remember that Iraqis turn out in huge numbers for the polls every time they have a chance.
They're not in charge right now, are they? They're not winning the battle for Fallujah and Mosul.
If we stop propping up the Maliki regime, we will see.
I'm not talking about propping up anything. I am worried about, all of that sacrifice. Has it been for nothing because this president had a political agenda? Kirsten, you want to jump in? Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I think that you make a great point, and that is that, yes, there has been democracy to some extent, but it has to do with the current prime minister and the policies that were put in place. If you have a democracy, but you have, leaders that are engaging in corrupt practices, or they are eliminating or not letting the Sunnis, in this example, have a stake in their government, then of course they're going to be upset. And that's one of the reasons why ISIS has achieved so much success in the northern part of that country, is because they've been able to build some tenuous ties with Baathists, who formerly they hated one another, in order to gain more territory, because the Sunnis don't feel like they have a stake in their government. If we can help with that, we can help that country.
Todd and Andy, I want to hear from you guys.
Sean, I'm concerned about the story that's really not being covered here, and that is the systematic extermination of Christians in the Middle East. We have seen thousands and thousands of Christians slaughtered. Back in the 1990s, there were 1.2 million Christians in Iraq. Now they estimate around 300,000. Who do you think all those folks are that are running for their lives right now? Those are Christians. I write about this on my book.
430 churches in Indonesia?
That's right. Those churches are being burned. I write about this in my book, God Bless America. This is a very serious situation, and we need to pay very close attention, because what's happening in the Middle East, we're starting to see it happen in Europe, and you better believe it's going to start happening in our back door before too long.
Andy?
Yeah, Sean, I tend to agree with KT. If you look at, we have hard metrics about all the things we've been talking about. These brave guys have been talking about the caliphate. 2/3 of the Muslims from Morocco to Indonesia are in favor of establishing a caliphate. That's not a tiny minority of extremists. They may have idealized visions about what that actually entails,
Are you saying
but it's
that
objective.
the majority of the Islamic
we have hard polling
world
data.
is radicalized? I mean, is that what you're saying? I mean, speak plainly.
That's not radicalized to their standard. To our standard, it absolutely is.
So
if they want a caliphate,
it's radicalized.
We're unwilling to admit. We are honestly unwilling to admit that they are radicalized. I mean, the fact of the matter is, KT said we handed them democracy on a silver platter.
Exactly.
The bottom line is they're not intelligent enough or accountable enough.
I don't know if I
to institute the democracy that we were bringing to them.
Politically correct. What do you mean by not intelligent enough?
You can call me politically incorrect, whatever you want. The fact of the matter is that society is the cradle of civilization. They are not accountable or intelligent enough to understand Western democracy as we tried to impose.
I have to respond to that, and that is that the cultural tradition has not been one formerly that has been suited for democracy, because the civic associations aren't there, the community building isn't there, and they've gone from military regimes to Islamist regimes. But there is hope with democracy. No. Technology has wait. If I can just finish, I have hope for the next generation, because technology has done a lot to democratize these countries and inspire the next generation of young people to be more moderate. And I think with time, you will see that region transform because of young people. They are doing it.
People up. Democratized to impose the Sharia.
Sean,
I mean, 91% of Iraqis, after we liberated the place, want the Sharia. These are hard metrics from Pew. 99% of the Afghans want the Sharia. That may be democracy to them.
We will come back. We'll continue more of this epic Hannity show. And we got a showdown between Brigitte Gabriel and Sabah Ahmed regarding the clear and present danger of radical Islam. And if you thought last night's conversation was heated, wait until you see part 2. And then later, New York City officials react to the threat posed by this man, the head of ISIS, who said upon his release, quote, "I'll see you guys in New York City." What exactly does that mean, and how concerned should people be here at home? Our experts weigh in. We're glad you're with us.